Billionaire David Miller arrived home unannounced, and the moment he heard his triplets laughing inside the house, he froze, because they had not laughed since their mother died. His hands shook as he walked through the hallway, confused, scared, and wondering who or what could make that sound in his broken home. When he pushed open the sunroom door, he stopped breathing. His 3 sons were on the back of his maid Angela, laughing while she crawled on the floor like a horse. David's voice came out angry and shocked. "Angela, what are you doing with my children?" Angela jerked, her whole body stiff, her eyes wide with fear. She tried to stand, but the boys held her shoulders tightly, like they did not want to lose her. "Sir, I was only trying to help them," she whispered, shaking. David stepped inside slowly, each step heavy, his face tight with emotion. "Help them," he repeated, his voice low. "How? How did you make them laugh when I have tried everything for 8 months?" Angela lowered her head, her hands trembling. "I am sorry, sir. They asked me to play. I did not mean to cross any line." The room went silent, only the boys breathing softly. David felt something break inside him, a painful mix of anger, shock, and something he could not understand. He pointed at her with a shaking hand. "Tell me the truth, Angela," he said, his voice heavy. "What did you do to my sons?" Angela looked up slowly, her eyes filled with fear and pain, and she whispered words that would change everything. "Sir, I did nothing. I only gave them what they lost, someone who is not afraid to sit on the floor with them." David felt his chest tighten. He stared at her, at the boys, at the joy he had forgotten. And in that moment, he knew this was no small thing. This was the beginning of something that would shake his home, his heart, and everything he believed he could control. David Miller pushed open his front door slowly, his mind tired, his face heavy, his suit jacket hanging off his shoulder like a man carrying too much pain. He wanted silence. He wanted the same empty house he walked into every day, the same cold air, the same quiet that followed him like a shadow since his wife Laura died. He expected nothing to change, nothing to soften the ache in his chest, nothing to tell him he was still a father and not a broken man pretending to function. But the moment he stepped inside, something strange happened. A sound rose inside the house, a soft sound at first, then louder, then fuller. It was laughter. Not just any laughter. It was the laughter of his triplets, Ethan, Noah, and Liam, the same children who had not laughed for 8 months, the same boys who cried themselves to sleep, the same boys who refused to talk about their mother because it hurt too much. David froze in the hallway. His briefcase slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. The laughter continued, bright and full, almost like joy. He pressed his hand against the wall to steady himself. His throat tightened. He felt fear first, then confusion, then something deeper, something he did not want to name. He took one slow step, then another. His shoes clicked against the wooden floor, each step louder than the last. He felt like a stranger walking inside his own home. The laughter guided him toward the sunroom, the same place Laura loved, the same room he refused to enter since the funeral because the light inside reminded him of her smile. When he reached the doorway, he paused. His hand rested on the doorframe. His breath came out slow, almost shaky. Then he pushed the door open, and the sight inside made his heart feel like it stopped. Angela, the maid he barely knew, was on her hands and knees on the floor. Ethan, Noah, and Liam were sitting on her back like she was a horse, their tiny hands holding her shoulders. Their faces were bright, their mouths open in laughter, their eyes soft with joy he thought was gone forever. For a long moment, David could not speak. His chest felt tight, his legs heavy. He stared at the scene like it was a dream he was scared to believe. Then his voice broke out, rough and angry. "Angela, what are you doing with my children?" Angela froze. Her whole body went still. The boys stopped laughing and looked at their father with confusion. Angela slowly lifted her head, her eyes filled with fear. She tried to rise, but the boys clung to her, refusing to let go. "Sir, I am sorry," she whispered, her voice shaking. "They asked me to play. I only wanted to help." David stepped inside the room slowly, his fingers curled against his palm. His voice carried confusion, fear, and a kind of pain he tried to bury. "Help them," he repeated softly. "How? How did you make them laugh when nothing worked? How did you reach them when I could not?" Angela lowered her head. Her hands trembled. The boys held her like she was something safe, something warm, something they did not want taken away. "Sir, I did not do anything special," she said softly. "They were sad. They needed someone to sit with them, someone who is not afraid of their tears." David swallowed hard. His eyes burned. He felt something dangerous rise inside him, a feeling he did not understand. He looked at his children, at their small smiles, at their gentle hands resting on Angela's back. It hurt him in a way he could not describe. Not because Angela played with them, but because they had not looked that alive with him in months. Ethan stepped forward first, his voice small and gentle. "Daddy, we were just playing," he said. Noah reached for Angela's arm. "She is nice to us, Daddy. She helps us." Liam nodded and pressed his cheek against Angela's shoulder. "She makes the house feel less cold." David's breath caught. He had heard many painful things since Laura died, but this cut deeper. His sons felt cold inside their own home, and he had not noticed. He stared at them, then at Angela, then back at the room that once felt warm when Laura was alive. Angela slowly stood up, her hands still shaking. The boys stepped behind her like she was a shield. "Sir, I know my place," she said quietly, her eyes lowered. "I know I am just the help, but they needed someone to hold them, someone to sit on the floor, someone to stay close." David's voice cracked. "Why did they laugh with you?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Why not with me?" Angela lifted her eyes, just a little. The pain on her face was gentle, not proud at all. "Sir, sometimes children hide their pain from the person they fear losing again," she said softly. "They lost their mother, and they are scared to hurt you." David felt his knees weaken. He stepped back slightly. The truth in her words hit him with painful force. He had been walking around like a shadow, silent, closed, afraid to feel anything. His boys felt that. They mirrored it. They stopped living because he had stopped living. Angela kept her eyes down. "I am sorry, sir," she whispered again. "I did not want to upset you." David looked at the floor, then at his children, then at Angela. The room felt heavy, warm, strange, and painful at the same time. The laughter was gone now, replaced by a silence that pressed against his chest. He took a slow breath. His voice softened without him planning it. "Do not apologize," he said quietly. "You did something I could not do." Angela blinked, surprised. Her mouth trembled slightly. "You made them feel safe," he added, his voice shaking. "You gave them something I have not been able to give since Laura died." The room stayed still. The boys stepped closer to their father, unsure. Angela stepped back, unsure too. David placed his hand on his chest, feeling the ache he carried every day. He looked at Angela again, his eyes soft for the first time in months. "Thank you," he said quietly. Angela lowered her eyes, tears gathering at the bottom, but she nodded slowly. And that moment, that fragile moment, became the beginning of everything that would follow. The beginning of healing, the beginning of change, and the beginning of a story none of them were ready for. David stood in the sunroom long after the boys left with Angela. The quiet inside the house felt different. Not the heavy silence he had lived with for months, but a new strange silence filled with questions he was not ready to face. His hands rested on the doorframe, his eyes unfocused. His children had just laughed for the first time in 8 months, and the shock of it still pressed against his chest. He walked slowly toward the living room, sinking into the sofa like a man who had been carrying too much weight for too long. His fingers rubbed his forehead, trying to understand the ache inside him. He was grateful, but he was also ashamed. It took a maid, a woman he barely knew, to give his sons something he could not give them, and that truth tore him more than he wanted to admit. As he sat there, his mind drifted back to the night everything changed. It came like a quiet storm in his head, the memory he tried so hard to bury. The night Laura died, he could still see her standing by the kitchen counter with her soft smile. She had kissed the boys on their foreheads and told them she would be back soon. Ethan held her hand and said, "Mommy, please hurry, I feel sick." Laura laughed and brushed his hair gently, saying she just needed to get his medicine from the pharmacy. It was late, the roads were dark, and the rain had started falling in heavy drops. David remembered the phone call. His phone buzzed while he was reading to the boys. He answered without thinking. A strange voice spoke, calm but serious. "Sir, there has been an accident on Riverdale Highway. A drunk driver hit a small car. We found your wife's ID. We need you to come immediately." His heart dropped. The room spun. He rushed to the car, shaking, praying, begging God to spare her. But when he arrived and saw the crushed car, the broken glass, the flashing lights, and the white sheet covering a body on the road, he knew his life had ended in that moment. His knees buckled, his voice broke, and he fell beside her, holding the sheet like he could warm her back to life. The boys never forgot that night. They cried for hours, asking where Mommy was. For months, they refused to sleep alone. They stopped laughing, stopped playing, stopped being children. And David, broken and drowning in guilt, shut himself inside his own pain. He could not talk about Laura without crying. He could not look at her things without shaking. And he could not comfort his children because he could not comfort himself. Now, sitting alone in the living room, the memory felt sharp again. It made his eyes burn. He wiped his face angrily, ashamed that he had let the memory control him again. The house felt like a place filled with ghosts, and he had spent months running from them. But Angela, she did not run. She walked into all that sadness and brought a little light back. He stood slowly and walked toward the kitchen. He could hear the boys talking softly. Their voices were small but alive. He paused at the doorway and saw them sitting at the table with Angela. She served them warm snacks, and they leaned close to her like she was someone they trusted, someone steady. Angela looked up and saw him. Her eyes softened with worry, as if she feared he would send her away for what happened earlier. She wiped her hands on her apron and whispered, "Sir, are you all right?" David nodded slowly, though he was not all right at all. He stepped forward and looked at his sons. Ethan lifted his head and whispered, "Daddy, can Angela stay for dinner?" David felt something move inside his chest. He nodded again. "Yes, she can stay." Angela blinked in surprise. She lowered her eyes and whispered a soft thank you. The boys smiled a little, small smiles but real. David watched them eat and felt the room warm in a way he had not felt since Laura died. When dinner ended, Angela helped the boys upstairs. David followed slowly. He stood by the hallway, watching her tuck them into their beds. She rubbed Noah's back gently, helped Ethan place his stuffed bear beside him, and covered Liam's feet with his blanket. The boys looked peaceful. David swallowed a painful lump. He had forgotten what it felt like to see them safe, calm, and cared for. Angela dimmed the lights and stepped into the hallway. She closed the door softly and turned toward him. Her voice came out quiet. "Sir, I hope you are not angry with me. I only wanted to help them breathe again. They look so sad every day." David looked at her for a long moment. His voice came out slow. "I am not angry. Angela, I just do not understand how you did it. How you reached them." Angela lowered her eyes. "Children feel pain even when they do not speak," she said softly. "Sometimes they only need someone to sit on the ground with them, someone to listen, someone who is not afraid of their tears." David felt his throat tighten. He leaned against the wall, staring at the floor. "My wife died in a car accident," he whispered. "A drunk driver hit her. The boys lost everything that night. And I lost myself." Angela's eyes softened with pain. "I am sorry, sir. I cannot imagine your hurt." David shook his head. "They stopped laughing after she died," he said quietly. "They have been silent for 8 months." Angela stepped forward slightly. "Sir, grief does not leave easily. But when children find someone who feels gentle, someone who reminds them that laughter does not erase their mother, they begin to breathe again." Her words hit him in a deep place. He felt tears sting his eyes. He turned away, ashamed to cry in front of her. Angela looked at him, unsure if she should speak again. David whispered, "Thank you, Angela. You did something I could not do." Angela lowered her head slowly. "I am only doing my best, sir." The hallway felt full, heavy with emotions neither of them knew how to carry. David took a step back toward his room, but then he stopped and turned slightly. "Angela," he said quietly, "please do not leave this house. Not yet." Angela's breath caught. She nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, I will stay." And that small promise, spoken in a quiet hallway, marked the beginning of a change none of them expected. Angela walked down the stairs quietly that night, her slippers soft against the floor, her heart carrying a weight she did not understand. She had worked in many houses before. She had cared for many children, but she had never felt the kind of sadness she felt in the Miller home. It was a sadness that stayed in the air, a sadness you breathed in without trying. She could feel it in the walls, in the empty corners, in the photographs that still showed Laura's smile. David stayed upstairs for a long time. When he finally came down, his face looked tired, not from work, but from the kind of pain that sits deep inside a person. He walked to the kitchen without speaking. Angela stood near the counter, unsure if she should leave or stay. The kitchen light made the room feel warm, but the silence between them felt heavy. David stopped at the sink and ran his fingers over the edge. He did not look at her at first. He only breathed slowly, like he had forgotten how to breathe for many months. Angela watched him quietly. She knew grief when she saw it. She lived with it every day. He finally turned toward her. His voice was low, almost gentle. "Angela, how long have you worked here?" She swallowed. "1 month, sir." He nodded. "It feels longer," he said softly. "You stepped into this house and changed things without asking for anything." Angela lowered her eyes. "I did not change anything, sir. Your children were hurting, and I only wanted to help them feel less alone." David moved to the table and sat down slowly. He looked tired, worn out, older than his age. Angela hesitated, then pulled out a chair and sat across from him, leaving space between them, space that still felt full. He rubbed his hands together. "My boys laughed today," he whispered. "I heard it from the hallway, and I did not believe it was real." Angela felt her chest tighten. "They needed to laugh, sir. They have been holding everything inside for too long." David looked at her with eyes that held months of pain. "How did you do it?" he asked quietly. "How did you reach them when I could not?" Angela placed her hands in her lap. She spoke slowly. "Sir, children do not always speak with words. They speak with silence too. They speak with sadness. They speak when they cling to someone. They speak when they hide their faces. When I came here, I saw 3 boys who wanted to cry but were too scared. I sat on the floor with them. I let them lean on me. I let them talk when they felt ready." David looked down, his voice soft. "I have been failing them. Angela shook her head gently. You have not failed, sir. You are grieving too. The words hung in the air. David blinked slowly, his throat tight. She said it so simply, but it touched him deeply. He had avoided that truth, avoided everything connected to Laura because the pain was too strong. He leaned back slightly. When Laura died, he whispered, my heart broke, and I did not know how to fix myself, let alone my sons. Angela felt tears gather in her eyes. She did not speak, she only listened, which was what he needed. David continued, his voice shaking slightly. I watched them cry at night. I heard them calling for their mother, but I could not go to them. I was scared I would fall apart. I was scared they would see my tears and get worse. Angela nodded slowly. Children do not break when you cry, sir. They feel closer. They feel less alone. Grief is not something they hide from. They are already in it with you. David let out a long breath and closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, Angela saw something new in them, something fragile. He looked down at the table, then back at her. Sit with me for a moment, he whispered. Angela nodded gently and stayed seated. The room felt calm, not comfortable, but quiet in a soft way. After a long silence, David asked, Angela, why did you accept this job? My mother-in-law said you were different, but she did not explain why. Angela stared at her hands. She swallowed the ache in her throat. Sir, I accepted because I know grief. I know what it does to a house. I know how it tears a family apart. I wanted to help, even if it was only a little. David studied her carefully. His voice softened. You lost someone too. Angela nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. My daughter, sir. Her name was Grace. She was 3 years old. David felt the air shift. He straightened slowly. Angela, I am so sorry. Angela forced a small breath. It was 2 years ago. She had leukemia. I watched her get weaker every day. I watched her lose her strength. And when she took her last breath, my world ended. David's eyes filled with pain. How do you live with something like that? Angela looked at the table, her voice trembling. I did not live, sir, not at first. I cried every night. My husband blamed me. He said I should have noticed her sickness sooner. He left me, and I was alone. I became a maid because I did not know how to live without children's voices around me. Their laughter helps me breathe. David sat still, the truth hitting him deeply. You helped my sons because you understand loss. Angela nodded slowly. Yes, sir. I understand what it feels like to hold pain alone. David stared at her with something close to respect, something he had not felt in a long time. You carried this much hurt, and still found a way to help my children. Angela wiped her cheek quietly. Your sons are good boys, sir. They just needed someone to hold their sadness without being scared. David leaned forward slightly. And what about you, Angela? Who holds yours? Angela froze. Her lips trembled. For a moment she did not speak. Then she whispered, I hold it alone, sir. That is all I know. David felt something deep inside him shift. For the first time since Laura's death, he did not feel alone in his grief. The sadness he carried did not feel quiet anymore. It felt shared. He looked at Angela gently. You do not have to hold it alone anymore. Angela lifted her eyes slowly. Their eyes met, and for one small moment, two broken hearts sat across from each other in the same quiet kitchen, carrying pain they never expected to share. And in that moment, something new began. Something both of them feared. Something both of them needed. Something neither of them understood yet. The next morning, David woke earlier than usual. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor, feeling the same heavy ache that had followed him for months. But something else sat inside him now. Something he did not know how to name. The memory of last night stayed with him. The quiet moment in the kitchen when Angela's pain and his pain sat together, not fighting, not hiding, just breathing in the same space. It had unsettled him in a way he could not explain. He stood slowly and walked downstairs. The house was quiet, but not empty. He could hear small footsteps, soft voices, and the faint clatter of dishes. When he entered the kitchen, he found Angela preparing breakfast. She moved gently, her hands steady, her hair tied back neatly. There was something calm about her that made the room feel less cold. The boys were seated at the table, sleepy but smiling. Ethan rubbed his eyes, Noah played with a spoon, and Liam leaned his head on his hand in a way that made David's chest tighten with softness he had not felt in months. Angela saw him enter and gave a small nod. "Good morning, sir." David nodded back. "Good morning." He poured himself coffee and sat at the far end of the table. He watched quietly as Angela served the boys. She listened when they spoke, even when their words were small and unsure. Noah asked if she could read to them later. Liam wanted to play in the garden. Ethan wanted pancakes again. Angela answered them with patience and warmth. David felt something shift again. She treated his children not like a job, but like something precious. He had not seen that kind of gentleness in his home since Laura died. After breakfast, the boys ran upstairs to dress. Angela began clearing the table. David stayed seated, watching her hands move slowly across the plates. He wanted to say something, but the words felt tangled. Finally, he took a breath. "Angela." She paused and looked at him. "Yes, sir." He rubbed the back of his neck. "About last night. Thank you for talking to me." Angela nodded gently. "You needed someone to listen, sir, and that is all right." Her voice was soft, but firm enough to let him know she meant every word. David lowered his gaze. "I forgot how to talk about my pain," he whispered, "and I forgot how to let my sons see my emotions." Angela spoke slowly. "Grief does not stop you from loving, sir. It only makes love heavy. But your boys do not want a strong father. They want a real father." David felt those words strike something deep inside him. He nodded without speaking. Later in the morning, the boys came running down the stairs, excited to play outside. Angela helped them put on their jackets, then walked them into the garden. David watched from the window upstairs. He saw Angela kneel on the grass, helping the boys gather tiny flowers. They placed the flowers in a small bowl, giggling softly. Something inside David cracked open again. He touched the window pane gently, staring at them. They looked like a real family, even though he did not want to admit it yet. He decided to step outside. His footsteps were slow, almost hesitant. The morning air felt cold against his face. When he reached the garden, Angela looked up, surprised to see him. The boys ran to him quickly. "Daddy, look," Ethan said, showing him a small yellow flower. David smiled softly, the smile feeling strange but warm on his face. "That is nice, Ethan." Angela stood and dusted her hands. Her eyes held quiet respect, but also a softness he could not ignore. David wanted to speak, but the boys pulled him into their play. For a moment, he let himself breathe. Hours passed. Afternoon came. Angela helped the boys nap, while David sat alone in his office, staring at a picture of Laura. She looked beautiful in the photograph, holding the boys when they were toddlers. Her smile was warm, the kind of smile that lit up a room. David swallowed hard. He missed her. He missed her voice, her laugh, her gentle touch. But for the first time since her death, the photo did not feel like a knife in his chest. It felt like a memory he could sit with for a little while. The day grew quiet again. When the boys woke, Angela fixed them snacks, then helped them with their toys. David walked into the living room and found her sitting on the floor with them, building a small tower with blocks. Liam sat leaning against her arm. Noah rested his head on her knee, and Ethan laughed when the tower fell. David stared at the scene. It hurt him, but the hurt was strange, not sharp. It was the kind of hurt that comes when your heart remembers something warm after a long winter. Angela looked up and saw him. She looked unsure, almost like she expected him to pull away. Instead, David stepped inside slowly and sat on the couch. The boys looked at him with wide eyes. Ethan lifted a toy block. "Daddy, can you help us?" David took a slow breath. "Yes, I can help." Angela looked down, a small smile appearing, a quiet smile that held something gentle. David moved closer to the boys and picked up a block. He placed it gently on the tower. The boys cheered softly, even though the tower leaned crooked. Angela whispered, "You did well, sir." David looked at her. There was gratitude in his eyes, and something else he was not ready to say out loud. Evening arrived. Angela prepared dinner again, and David helped set the table, something he never did before. It surprised the boys, but it made Angela pause with a small, thoughtful look. After dinner, Angela took the boys upstairs for their bath. David walked to the bottom of the stairs and listened to the faint sound of their voices. He felt a warmth spread through the house that had been missing for too long. When Angela came down later with a basket of laundry, David stepped forward. "Angela, wait." She stopped, holding the basket close. "Yes, sir." David spoke slowly, unsure but honest. "You brought something back into this house, something I thought was gone forever." Angela blinked, her voice soft. "What did I bring, sir?" David's voice cracked slightly. "Life." Angela looked down, tears threatening, but she nodded quietly. David continued, "I do not know how to thank you, but I want you to know this. You matter here." Angela's eyes lifted, filled with emotion. "Sir, I only want to help. That is all." David whispered, "You did more than help." Their eyes held for a long, silent moment. A moment full of sadness, hope, fear, and something they both felt but could not name yet. Angela finally whispered, "Good night, sir." David nodded. "Good night, Angela." When she walked away, David stayed standing in the hallway, feeling something new settle inside him, something he feared, something he needed, something that would pull him deeper into a story he did not understand yet. The next morning began slowly. Soft sunlight entered the living room, touching the furniture gently, as if the house itself was waking up from a long, sad sleep. David stood near the window, watching the sun rise over the garden. His heart felt heavy, but not in the painful way it had felt for months. This time, it was a gentle weight, like something new was settling into place. He heard footsteps behind him. When he turned, Angela was standing in the doorway with the laundry basket in her hands. She looked unsure, like she was not certain if she should enter. David gave a small nod, inviting her in. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "Good morning, Angela," he replied. She placed the basket on the table and folded the boys' clothes neatly. David watched her quietly, noticing the calm way she moved, the soft patience in her hands, the way she carried herself with quiet strength. He had never paid attention before, but now he saw everything. He walked closer. "Angela, can we talk?" he asked gently. She froze slightly. "Yes, sir." David sat on the couch and waited for her to sit too. She sat slowly, her hands folded on her lap, her eyes lowered. "Angela," he began, his voice slow. "Last night, when you said you hold your pain alone, it stayed with me. I thought about it all night." Angela's eyes softened. "Sir, I did not mean to trouble you." "You did not," he said. "You only showed me something I needed to see." Angela waited quietly. David took a breath. "You helped my children in ways I did not know they needed. You helped me too. You sat with us in our darkest moments. You stayed when you could have left. No one else did that." Angela blinked slowly, her voice shaking a little. "They needed love, sir. That is all children ever need. Love helps them breathe again." David felt his throat tighten. He looked at his hands, then back at her. "Angela, you matter to this house. You matter to my children. And you matter to me." Angela's breath caught. Her eyes widened gently, not in fear, but in disbelief. Sir, I am only the maid. I am not sure I understand. David shook his head. No, Angela, you are not only anything. You are the reason my boys smile again. You are the reason this house feels warm again. Angela looked down, tears gathering slowly. Before she could speak, footsteps came from the stairs. Ethan ran down first, still half asleep, holding his stuffed bear. Noah followed, rubbing his eyes. Liam came last, clutching a small blanket. When they saw Angela, their tired faces lit up. Angela, Liam whispered. Can we have breakfast with you? Angela wiped her eyes quickly. Of course, sweetheart. The boys climbed onto her lap with no hesitation. David watched them, and for the first time since Laura died, he saw something beautiful. He saw his sons safe. He saw them loved. He saw them held without fear. The day went by quietly. They had breakfast together. The boys played in the garden while Angela watched them. David sat on the porch, watching all of them from a distance, feeling a warmth grow in his chest, a warmth he thought he would never feel again. He thought about Laura. He thought about the life they had shared. He thought about how she had always told him that love did not end when someone died. It only changed shape. He whispered her name in his heart and felt peace instead of pain. He knew she would want the boys safe. She would want him to heal. Later in the afternoon, the boys ran into the house, holding small flowers from the garden. Ethan ran up to David and placed one in his hand. Daddy, this is for you, he said softly. David closed his hand around the flower. Thank you, Ethan. Noah walked to Angela and placed a tiny white flower in her palm. Liam did the same. Angela's eyes filled with tears, but they were gentle tears, not heavy ones. We love you, Angela, Noah whispered. Angela covered her mouth, overwhelmed. I love you too, she whispered back. David watched the scene, unable to speak for a moment. Something inside him shifted again, settling in a way that felt right. That evening, after dinner, Angela washed the dishes while the boys sat on the couch watching cartoons. David approached her slowly. Angela, he said, I want to ask you something important. She turned, nervous. Yes, sir. He took a breath. My sons need you. They feel safe with you. They see you as part of their family. And I do too. Angela's hands trembled. Sir, people talk. People judge. People make ugly stories about anyone like me who stays too close to a man like you. David stepped closer, his voice steady. Let them talk. I do not care what they say. This house is not built for their voices. It is built for the people who live here. My sons. You. Me. Angela's eyes filled with soft tears as she whispered, What are you saying, sir? David spoke slowly, gently, honestly. I want you to stay with us, not just as a maid, but as part of this home, part of this family. My family needs you, and I do too. Angela covered her mouth, tears sliding down her cheeks. Sir, I do not know if I deserve that kind of place. David shook his head. You deserve peace, Angela. You deserve love. You deserve a home that holds you the same way you hold others. The boys ran into the kitchen at that moment. Ethan grabbed Angela's hand. Noah hugged her arm. Liam pressed his cheek against her waist. Stay with us, Angela, Ethan whispered. Please stay. Angela looked at their small faces. Then she looked at David. She felt her heart open slowly, gently, like something long locked away was waking again. She nodded. Yes, I will stay. The boys cheered softly and hugged her tight. David closed his eyes, letting out a breath he had been holding for months. Later that night, after the boys fell asleep, David stepped outside into the garden. The sky was calm, the air warm. Angela walked out to join him, her steps quiet. She stood beside him. They looked at the sky together, not needing to speak. David whispered softly, Tomorrow will be better. Angela nodded gently. Yes, sir, it will. David turned to her. Angela, you can call me David. Angela smiled softly for the first time since she entered his home. Good night, David. David's heart softened. Good night, Angela. They walked back inside, side by side, carrying pain, carrying hope, carrying something new that would guide them forward. And for the first time since Laura's death, the house did not feel broken. It felt alive. It felt warm. It felt like a family again. And one place. Right age Reese. Dear viewers, this story reminds us that sometimes the people who enter our lives quietly are the ones God uses to heal the pain we hide. David Miller thought his home would never feel warm again, but one woman, Angela, brought back joy, peace, and love to a house that had forgotten how to breathe. Her kindness reached a broken father and 3 hurting boys, and together they found a new beginning. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Tell us where you are watching from, and tell us what you learned from this story. If you want more emotional stories like this, comment the word "more," and you will be the first to get our next touching story. Now let me ask you 3 questions. 1. Do you believe that some people are sent into our lives for a reason? 2. Should love be judged by society, or should it be judged by the happiness it brings? 3. If you were in David's shoes, would you keep Angela in your home, even if people talked? Share your answers below, and thank you for watching.